Greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal program.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal program. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I was up in Ohio, and we were talking about and standing up against this thing that'll be coming up, a special ballot initiative called Issue 1. And what Issue 1 is basically going to do in the state of Ohio, one of the critical battleground states when you think about next year or any national election, it's going to codify in the state constitution by a simple majority. In August, they had the opportunity to say that two-thirds majority had to approve an amendment to the Ohio Constitution. That failed. So just by a simple majority, they're going to codify in the state constitution of Ohio the murdering of unborn babies up until the point of birth. I think that's one of the most extreme things that could ever be happening in the United States of America. But it is happening in several other states, California, New Jersey, you know, all of those blue states. It seems to me that they're all into infanticide. That's such an extreme position. That puts them on the same level. I mean, murdering unborn babies all the way throughout any time in the term of a pregnancy. That's something that you hear about in China and North Korea. But now we're starting to see that in the United States of America. And now they're trying to, implement that, codify that, put that into the Constitution of the state of Ohio. And let me tell you something, the progressive socialist left, because of the Dobbs decision, which basically said Roe v. Wade was no longer at the federal government level, they overruled that, it pushed it down to the states. And so now you see all of these incredible ballot initiatives that are showing up in even red states or these battleground states. The next one has a target on its back is Missouri. But what is interesting to me, and I can't understand how anyone can support infanticide. I remember the Virginia governor, Ralph Northam, who once said, and he's a medical doctor, we will take it. That's how the left sees the most beautiful thing in life, God's everyday miracle, a baby. We will take it and set it off to the side and decide what we're going to do with it. You don't decide what you're going to do with a baby. The very first inalienable right that we have in our Declaration of Independence that's endowed by the Creator God, not by man, is life, born and unborn. I remember when Barack Obama, the great savior from the left, their little messiah, he said that I would not want to punish my daughters with a baby. You don't believe me? Go back and you can see it.
I don't want them punished with a baby.
And as a state senator in Illinois, Barry Soetoro, he pushed legislation that said that even if a child survives an abortive procedure, the child still deserves to die. What type of demonic mentality is that? But we elected him for president, reelected him again. So, here's a guy that occupied the Oval Office that believes in infanticide. Now, the left is very good with language, and I've often, given them credit for that. Patient Protection, the Affordable Care Act, Inflation Reduction Act, we can go ad nauseum, ad infinitum. But every time that you talk about this issue, and like I say, I don't say abortion, that's their language. You abort a mission in the military. This is murdering an unborn baby by dismemberment in the womb, which is supposed to be the safest place for a baby is in the womb. But they will always come back and say, oh, you don't support women's reproductive health. And see, there's so many people out there that when they hear that, they go, But see, this is what you should respond back to the left when they say, you don't support women's reproductive health. You should say, yes, I do. I do support women's reproductive health. I think that we need to do better with finding solutions for ovarian cancer. We need to do better at finding solutions for uterine cancer, cervical cancers, breast cancers. It's part of women's reproductive health. I think that we should do better when it comes to fibroid tumors and understanding them and being able to be proactive in the treatment so maybe we can eradicate fibroid tumors. I think that, and let me tell you something. I've been a dad twice. I'm about to be a granddad for the second time here within the next couple of months. I've learned a lot. I've learned about chronic hypertension with superimposed preeclampsia. I had no clue about this until I became a dad. And now being a granddad. Because in the West family, we celebrate life. And we do everything to understand what women's reproductive health is all about so we can take the right precautions that are necessary to make sure that we protect the health of mom and child. So I have experiences with the fibroid tumors. I've had experiences in our family with the breast cancer. I've had experiences in my family with the preeclampsia, chronic hypertension, gestational hypertension. You're like, dadgum, Colonel, where you learning all this stuff? I read. Because to me, that's what women's reproductive health is. But see, when we allow the left to dominate the language, we don't challenge them because we're like, oh, I don't want to answer that. Oh, you got me. We should come back and challenge them and say, what are you exactly talking about? Because what you're talking about, progressive socialists, leftists, Marxists, and even some Republicans, you're not talking about women's reproductive health. You're talking about murdering unborn babies in the womb by dismemberment, even up to the time of birth. That's not reproductive health. That's a death sentence. Now, I know, here's but Colonel, you got to understand, we got all these cases of rape and incest. Colonel been doing some reading again, cross-checking, cross-verifying. The whole rape and incest thing is about 2 to 3% nationally, what's been reported. So in other words, what is happening in the United States of America is 97 to 98% is all about murdering unborn babies in the womb by dismemberment, and now even up to birth. That's what it's about. It's about this thing called choice. You're choosing to murder an unborn baby in the womb by dismemberment, now up to birth. That's the choice that you're making. And I'm not saying that, you don't have a choice. If this is about women's reproductive health, I just laid out what women's reproductive health is all about. Eradicating these cancers, the fibroid tumors, finding solutions for chronic hypertension, gestational hypertension, preeclampsia. And I do support exemptions. Now, there's some people that are out there to say, I want to abolish all abortions. I'm not an absolutist. I tend to have sympathy for those 2 to 3%, but in that 2 to 3%, we still need to be talking about the blessings of life. We still need to be talking about how we can wrap our arms around these mothers, these women, and how we can talk more about adoptions and other means by which we preserve life. We should not be out there thinking that the very first thing we should do is talk about how we terminate life, how we destroy life. That's an inalienable right that is granted to us by the Creator God. That is in the Declaration of Independence. But too often we go down and we just surrender this. And again, we're starting to put ourselves on pace with China and North Korea. I don't think that's where we want to be. I don't think that we want to have such an extreme position that says we're going to murder babies in the womb up to the time that they're born. Like I said, I've been a dad. I've been a granddad. I've watched that evolution of life in my wife and in my daughters. I can't relate to that. I just cannot. Or you hear the left talk about reproductive justice. I mean, right now we got the United States military that are saying that, if you're in a state like Texas where they restrict the murdering of unborn babies in the womb, the United States military, and this is why Senator Tommy Tuberville is holding up these advancements for 315 general officers, is the United States military saying we're going to give you leave and not charge you for it. We're going to reimburse you with your expenses to travel outside of a state and go somewhere else and murder the future generation, a future soldier, a future sailor, a future airman, a future Marine, a future Coast Guardsman, a future Space Force guardian. See, I thought when I was in the military, we were supposed to promote and advance the sense of military families. Instead of having policies saying that we're advancing reproductive justice, well, it's not justice to the baby. Or we have nonprofits and corporations that are raising funds to say that we'll pay for you to get out of a certain state and go somewhere and have this procedure done. New Mexico is becoming a destination for murdering unborn babies in the womb by dismemberment all the way up until the time of birth. It's supposed to be the land of enchantment. It's the land of murder. And I don't know, Governor Grisham out there, she's so concerned about, the deaths of 3 young kids to gun violence, which, she's supporting the rise of crime. So she's going to go and restrict the constitutional right of people to be able to protect and defend themselves. What about protecting and defending the unborn? I guess that's not a concern for you, Governor Grisham, that you like your state being a destination for death. California's the same way. I mean, who would have ever thought that a governor of a state would say, come here and kill your babies in the womb? That's what Gavin Newsom is doing. Phil Murphy in New Jersey. I don't get it. Reproductive justice is not justice for the baby in the womb, and the womb is supposed to be the safest place for the baby. But that's, again, another one of these terms that they throw out there. And, as Christians, and this was one of the reasons we were up there in Ohio, we were talking to black pastors because this issue has been detrimental in the black community. And I just want to share some verses, for those that ascribe to the Judeo-Christian faith heritage. Let me just share some verses with you because I think that the Bible is very clear on this issue. In Deuteronomy 30:19, it says, I'll call heaven and earth to witness against you today, this is God, that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving the Lord your God, by obeying his voice, and by holding fast to him. For this is your life and the length of your days, that you may live in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and to give them. So if you want to talk about pro-choice as a Christian, I mean, here's the choice that you have. I called heaven and earth to witness before you today. I've set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life. So I don't know what you pastor. I mean, Raphael Warnock, the senior pastor emeritus, whatever his title is, of Ebenezer Baptist Church, located in the neighborhood that I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, the old Fourth Ward neighborhood. He calls himself a pro-choice pastor. Well, I mean, Senator Warnock, I mean, here's the choice. But you're not choosing life. So what kind of pastor are you, Senator Warnock? I don't know, man. But tell you what, I don't want to be you on Judgment Day. You might have some issues, brother. Let's turn over to Psalms, okay? What does it say in Psalms 127, 3 through 5? Psalms 127, 3 through 5. Behold, the children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. So like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. It doesn't say anything about murdering them up until the time they're born. The fruit of the womb is a reward. And again, I'm just talking, if you ascribe to the Judeo-Christian faith heritage. Let's turn over here to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 1. And what does it say in verse 5? Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I have appointed you a prophet to the nations. That's what it says in the Bible. I mean, I don't understand pastors and other people that are supporting one of the gods of the Baals, Moloch, the god of child sacrifice. Now, that's just from a faith perspective, and I know everybody doesn't understand the faith perspective, but from your simple morality, let's just talk about 20 million black babies murdered in the womb since 1973 to 2023. There was a point in time, I believe in the state of New York, there were more black babies murdered in the womb than were actually being born. And as we reiterated when we were up there in Ohio, isn't it interesting that the black community, as long as I have known, has been stuck on 12 or 13%? Not growing, not going anywhere. Murdering our kids in the womb, murdering our kids on the street because of gang violence. Nobody's talking about rectifying that. So what are we to do? So from a moral issue, does that upset you? Or from a moral issue, I got to tell you, if you believe in this extreme position, which they're about to vote on in the state of Ohio in November, which if it passes, issue 1 by a simple majority, goes into the state constitution in Ohio, it's going to happen all across the United States of America. And look, I mean, that's part of our representative democracy. That's part of our constitutional republic, is that we do things by amending the Constitution. And if the other side is so vehement and so enthused and has such resolve that they're going to push this issue, and everyone else is going to sit at home, especially the body of Christ, the churches, the pastors, you're not talking about it, you're not standing up about it. Like Pharaoh Ramses said in the Ten Commandments, so let it be written, so let it be done. But do you really, folks in Ohio or anywhere across the United States of America, do you really want to align yourself with the exact same position of the Satanic Temple of America? I mean, even if I was not a Christian, I would not want to be in alignment with the Satanic Temple of America. Just saying. Or how about this, just from a moral perspective? Let me share with you some quotes that come from the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger said in an interview with John Parsons in 1947, "But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies." Chapter 5 from her book, Woman and the New Race, The Wickedness of Creating Large Families, dated 1920. "The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it." Let me repeat that. "The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it." Here's another quote. Margaret Sanger, an autobiography published in 1938, page 366. "I accept an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan." Since everyone's talking about racism and white supremacy and everything like that, this is the founder of the Planned Parenthood. "I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered." I mean, just from a moral standpoint, do you really want to align yourself with Planned Parenthood's founder, who is happy that she spoke to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan? Her autobiography, 1938, it was published, page 366. Okay, here again from chapter 5, The Wickedness of Creating Large Families, her book, Women in the New Race. "The most serious evil of our times is that of encouraging the bringing into the world of large families. The most immoral practice of the day is breeding too many children." That sounds like Chinese, man. You only get one. After that, got to whack them. The Eugenic Value of Birth Control Propaganda. The Birth Control Review. It's a 1921 book. As an advocate for birth control, I wish to take advantage of the present opportunity to point out that the unbalance between the birth rate of the unfit and the fit, admittedly the greatest present menace to civilization, can never be rectified by the inauguration of a cradle competition between these two classes. Unfit and fit. And that's what Planned Parenthood has become. I mean, this is birth control by murdering unborn babies in the womb. I mean, just from a moral standpoint, you agree with that? Putting the book here, the Bible aside, and the verses that come from God, but just from a moral standpoint, I'm trying to talk to your heart. Here's another quote. America needs a code for babies. Article 3, 27 March 1934, Margaret Sanger. A marriage license shall in itself give husband and wife only the right to a common household, not the right to parenthood. A marriage license shall in itself give husband and wife only the right to a common household, not to the right of parenthood. So in other words, I guess you got to go to the government and say, Mother, may I? Can I have a kid? Sounds like China to me. No woman shall have the legal right to bear a child, and no man shall have the right to become a father without a permit for parenthood. Article 4 of America Needs a Code for Babies, Margaret Sanger. No woman shall have the right to bear a child. No man shall have the right to become a father without a permit for parenthood. I guess it's kind of like getting a driver's license. Come down here, government agency on parenthood. That's why we started this organization. Here's another quote, exact same thing, Article 5, America Needs a Code for Babies. Permits for parenthood shall be issued upon application by city, county, or state authorities to married couples, provided they are financially able to support the expected child, have the qualifications needed for proper rearing of the child, have no transmissible diseases, and on the woman's part, no medical indication that maternity is likely to result in death or permanent injury to health. Now, I do like the old Spartan warriors. But one thing I did not like about the Spartan culture is that they had folks who would judge babies. And if a baby was deemed unfit or, if, had some health issue, they threw the baby off a cliff. That's what we're doing here. No permit for parenthood shall be valid for more than one birth. That is totally China. Article 6, America Needs a Code for Babies. Apply a stern and rigid policy of sterilization and segregation. Let me say that again. Sterilization and segregation to that grade of population, whose progeny is tainted or whose inheritance is such that objectionable traits may be transmitted to offspring. My Way to Peace, January 17, 1932, Margaret Sanger Papers in the Library of Congress. There's a bust of Margaret Sanger in the Smithsonian Institute, a white supremacist, a racist, who was proud to speak at the Women's Ku Klux Klan rally. These two words, birth control, sum up our whole philosophy. It means the release and cultivation of the better elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks. Those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. October 23, Margaret Sanger, Highlights in the History of Birth Control. Cultivation of the better elements in our society, the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. Here's another quote. My own position is that the Catholic doctrine is illogical. Maybe that's why the FBI was infiltrating the Catholic Church. The whole pro-life thing. That doctrine is illogical, according to Margaret Sanger, the Pope's position on birth control, January 27, 1932, not in accordance with science and definitely against social welfare and race improvement. My own position is that the Catholic doctrine is illogical, not in accordance with science, and definitely against social welfare and race improvement. All of our problems are the result of overbreeding among the working class. I thought the Democrats liked the working class. Seems to me that Margaret Sanger doesn't like the working class. Knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. Okay, so here's the chick that spoke to the Women's Ku Klux Klan meeting and was proud of it and happy that she got other invitations. And now she's talking about all of our problems are the result of overbreeding among the working class. Knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. I guess I ain't clean. Remember when Joe Biden said that Barack Obama was clean and articulate? Birth control itself, often denounced as a violation of natural law, is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out the unfit, of preventing the birth of defectives or of those who will become defectives. And here's the killer. If we are to make racial progress, this development of womanhood must precede motherhood in every individual woman. Woman in the New Race, 1920. If we are to make racial progress, this development of womanhood must precede motherhood in every individual woman. Those are quotes from the founder of Planned Parenthood. To me, I would think that from a moral perspective, no one would want to align themselves with this organization, who now, their new line of business is child gender mutilation surgeries. The last thing I want to read to you from Margaret Sanger and her vision, her understanding of reproductive health, which is what the left believes in today. December the 10th, 1939, a letter to Dr. C.J. Gamble, 255 Adams Street, Milton, Massachusetts. Here's the excerpt that I want to read to you. There is only one thing that I would like to be in touch with, and that is the Negro Project of the South, which, if the execution of the details remain in Mrs. Rose's hands, my suggestions will not be confusing because she knows the way my mind works. Miss Rose sent me a copy of your letter of December the 5th, and I note that you doubt it worthwhile to employ a full-time Negro physician. It seems to me, from my experience where I have been in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, that while the colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorant superstitions and doubts. Speaking of Negroes, ignorance, superstitions, and doubts. They do not do this with white people. If we can train the Negro doctor at the clinic, he can go among them with enthusiasm and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results among the colored people. His work, in my opinion, should be entirely with the Negro profession and the nurses, hospital social workers, as well as the county's white doctors. His success will depend upon his personality and his training by us. The minister's work is also important. And he should also be trained, and he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members, like Colonel Allen West. This is it. So in Ohio, What you're voting on in November and what the left is proliferating and promulgating all across the United States of America right now is not women's reproductive health. It's not reproductive justice. It's the ideals, goals, objectives, and designs of a very dangerous, delusional, deranged woman, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. And if you look at the statistics, anywhere from 72 to 75% of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in minority communities, black communities. What is reproductive health? To us that believe in life, that inalienable right for the born and unborn, it means protecting the womb, protecting our children, protecting mothers. It means eradicating these cancers that prevent reproductive health: ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, eradicating fibroid tumors, finding a solution for chronic hypertension with superimposed preeclampsia, gestational hypertension. That's reproductive health. What the other side is talking about is a cleaner race. Murdering unborn babies in the womb, all the way up until the time of birth, and even afterwards. God has told us through the scriptures his perspective on life. But as Joshua said, choose for yourselves today whom you shall worship, being the gods of the Amorites or the gods from across the river. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Who are you going to serve? Are you going to align yourself with Margaret Sanger and the Satanic Temple of America? What is women's reproductive health? It means life. Steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.